Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good Monday morning. It is June 24th, 2024, and we're so glad that you tuned in to Financial Issues today to help yourself become a better investor, to be a biblically responsible investor, and to honor Christ in all of your financial decisions. So if you are a partner, we had a partner conference call last week. Make sure that you head on over to financialissues.org and see what we had to say off air to the partners of the ministry. If you're not a partner, you can become one for just $132 a year, and you'll still be able to hear the partner conference call from this week because it'll stay up for another couple of weeks. So financialissues.org, find out more about our ministry. Our stewardship verse today comes from Proverbs 3:5-6. This is one of my favorite all-time verses. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. Seth, what do you think?
Well, I agree with you, Shana. That's one of the best. Absolutely. All scriptures God breathed, but some verses just really jump out at you, and this is one of them. You know, throughout human history, Shana, I think it's true that we've been tempted to play God ever since the beginning. When we were first tempted. We desire to be God. And so rather than walking by faith, being obedient to God, trusting in him with the outcome, oftentimes what we try to do vainly is we try to control and micromanage situations so that outcomes can happen in our favor, basically. And one of the ways that we do this with our money, sadly, is by this concept of timing the market. And so I kind of wanted to just hand it off to you, Shana, here with the dangers of timing the market as our teachable moment for today. So we talked about this briefly last week, very briefly, but kind of continuing that conversation now, starting with this, what is market timing, Shana?
Well, market timing is whenever you try to time your investments on market drops in the market. If you think, well, you know, X, Y, and Z is going to happen and that's going to make the market drop, so I'm not going to invest today. I'm going to wait until the market goes down and then put my money in and hopefully make a huge profit.
Yeah. And how is it, and you've mentioned this before, how is it similar to gambling and in that way also different from long-term investing?
Well, it can be different from long-term investing because if you're looking at the volatility in the market, and there is a lot of volatility in the market, then you're going to be constantly getting in and out. A long-term approach is really being an investor. When you take a look at a publicly traded company and you say, hey, that company has a good product. They have a good management team. They've been very successful implementing their business strategy. The company's making money, their earnings and their sales are going up, and I'd like to be an owner of that company. That's what investing is. Market timing is really just trying to take advantage of volatility, moving in and moving out. It's a very uncertain thing because short term, you know, it's likely emotions that drive the economy because really companies only report their results every quarter. So what happens, what happens in between those reporting periods to make the prices move a lot? Well, oftentimes it's emotion. And so, you're just taking advantage of, volatility and other people's emotions, what they feel is going to happen to a stock in trying to do that.
Yeah, it's really good. And Shana, I've heard you say a lot on the show, there's no rich market timers on Wall Street. Why is this true?
Yeah. The founder of our ministry used to say that all the time too. And so that's one of the things that, our listeners are very ingrained in is that, there are no rich market timers on Wall Street. Well, you may look around and you may think, well, hang on. I heard about this one investor who has a track record of an average of 30% a year, and he's never had a negative year. Well, he sounds like a rich market timer. Well, the particular one I'm thinking of is technically a market timer, and he's been pretty successful. But if you even hear him talk about it, he'll tell you how he's made mistakes and how he's missed things as well. So, the only accurate market timers are really the ones who are looking at history rather than the future. So I remember when I got started in the business and we got access to this program called hypotheticals. And basically what we could do is we could build these portfolios and we could back test them over time and we could see how they did. Well, I can tell you from experience that when you put together your best presentation and then you went to back test it, most of the time you never got it right. I even have a program today where I can put in a sample portfolio, and then I can click the button and tell it to optimize it and tell me what it should have been over history. Well, it changes it every time. So, looking forward and looking back are two different things. And, a lot of people look at history and think, well, 12% for the markets, that's a pretty decent long-term average. But they start looking at the year-to-year volatility and they think, ooh, what if I could have avoided this downturn? What if I could have avoided these negative years and only had the positive years? Well, that gets your greed meter really running on overdrive. So, they study the things that cause those negative years and then they try to predict the next one. So even a hypothetical world's greatest market timer who could somehow buy at every 52-week low would still underperform the market. Simply underperform a buy and hold strategy due to missing out on compounding returns during the times spent waiting on the sidelines. So let's say that you bought at the low and sold at the high, and then you got out and you're waiting for the next low. Well, what research has told us is that even that strategy, even if you had hindsight and could pick the best times to get in, you still would have underperformed someone who just got in and stayed in. Numerous studies have found that there are no reliable patterns or indicators that consistently predict market tops and bottoms. Most of the time, the best days follow the worst days. So being out of the market means that missing the best days are going to put a drag on your return. And timing the market requires two perfectly right decisions. Yeah. Being right about getting out, being right about getting in. And, Seth, do you remember that guy who predicted COVID so accurately that he was able to get out when the market started plummeting and he got back in on the day that it bottomed? He had it all figured out. He knew exactly what was going to happen. He knew when COVID would enter the U.S., when the vaccines would be approved, when the economy would shut down, how much money Congress was going to appropriate, and when it was going to be over. He even knew the exact date that Biden would go on 60 Minutes and declare that the pandemic was over. It was the same guy that predicted the financial crisis in 2008 and 2009. Do you remember that guy?
I would love to shake this guy's hand. I can't think of the guy, though. I don't know who it is.
Yeah, me neither. I just made all that up. He doesn't exist.
Right, he doesn't exist. Yeah.
He doesn't exist.
Yeah. But that's really well said, Shana. And it goes back to what we talked about in the beginning. It's so good to trust the Lord with all this stuff because the Lord is the one who does know all of these things. We don't. We can't predict the markets. It's not up to us. We don't have foresight to be able to do that. So, Shana, so instead of timing the market, because we can't, how would you encourage investors to use wisdom and patience and the skills that we offer here at the ministry as they enter and exit the market and they stay in long term? And understanding also that exiting the market for us, if you're investing with us, you shouldn't be thinking about exiting the market for many years if you're starting in the beginning because we are long term. What would you say to that?
Well, what I would say is that if you never want to experience a negative year or even a negative period of years, here's what you do. Listen very closely. This is profound. Never get in. Never get in and just be satisfied with a long-term average on your portfolio of between 1% to 4%, because that's all you're going to get if you're not willing to take the risk of seeing a negative year. And most likely, you'll end up with a negative return after you factor in taxes and inflation.
Shana, with long-term investing, do you think it's accurate to say, within reason, that the greater the risk, the greater the reward? Is that,
sure.
or greater the risk, greater the return, I guess, to use financial terms?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really good. And then even once we get into the market, Shana, like this may be for some of our listeners who've been in for a while, we're still tempted to overanalyze, question, look at the news headlines, wondering our decisions. How would you encourage the long-timers to be free of those fears?
Well, our verse of the day last week was from Ecclesiastes 11.
Yeah.
It also says in that chapter that farmers who wait for perfect weather will never plant, and if they watch every cloud, they will never harvest. So we can apply that
great.
to the ways that we make money today in investing. They had an agricultural society back then, so farming was an example that really spoke to them. But if we are prone to a perfectionist mindset, which is really a religious spirit, we're always looking for the perfect time to invest. When it comes to investing, we can take a lesson from the world's worst market timer. We don't have time to talk about him right now because we have to take a break. But let's talk about him whenever we come back.
Awesome.
How about that?
Awesome. That sounds great, Shana. Thank you. And folks, that part of our strategy, part of what's core to it is that we get in and we're staying in and we're not overanalyzing and worrying. And it's based on this biblical concept of trusting in the Lord. And so we're going to continue to encourage you to do that. We got more financial issues coming up right after this break. Stick with us.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Well, folks, we're talking about market timing and the dangers of it in this first part of our show here. And Shana was giving some great insight in that last segment. Ended on a little bit of a cliffhanger. I want to meet this world's worst market timer, Shana. I want you to tell us about it. Who is this guy?
Well, we'll just call him Bob.
Okay, sounds good. For a second, I thought you were going to call him Seth, and I wasn't sure I was going to be offended or not. No,
I don't know. We might have partners named Bob. Why don't we just call him Joe? No,
sounds good.
All right. He will remain unnamed.
There you go. There you go.
All right. So this guy, he saved money every year starting when he was in his early 20s, when he was about 22 years old, and this was in 1970. Well, he only had the courage to invest when markets were at their highs. So he would save money every single year, but he was too afraid to put it into the market when the news was bad, when when all of the financial news that he was listening to was negative, when the financial reports that were coming out were just negative. Even though the market was doing well, and the market would do well for year after year after year. And finally, after seeing so many years of the markets doing well, he would have the courage to invest the money that he had accumulated. So over roughly 40 years, let's just assume that he retired at normal retirement age around 65. So around those over those 40-ish years or so, he accumulated $148,000 that he deployed into the market. We're just going to say the market in general. at 4 different times. He invested some of it in 1972, right before the market dropped 48%. The second time he invested was in October of 1987. The markets had done really well. He got up the courage. He put the money that he had accumulated since the last time he had invested, he invested that money, and then the portfolio dropped 34%. Then in December of 1999, we had just come off of a decade of blockbuster gains, the dot-com bubble, and all of those things. The market was at all new highs, and the sky was the limit. The news was great. All the skies were blue, and so he had taken the money that he accumulated since 1987, and he put that in. Well, then the portfolio dropped 49%. But the good news is that he left the money in. Once he invested it, he didn't take it out, even though it dropped. Finally, in October of 2007, the markets had been doing well again, and he decided to invest all of the money that he had accumulated since 1999. Well, as soon as he put it in October of 2007, we went on this 17-month losing spree where the market dropped 52%. So what was the punishment? What was this guy's punishment for being the worst market timer ever? Well, he became a millionaire. Such a terrible punishment, right?
Right, yeah.
So investing, saving and investing through that 40-ish years or so, he had invested a total of $184,000. He had accumulated $1.1 million by the time that he had retired. So, since we just love looking back at history and figuring out what we should have done differently, right? Which I don't encourage that. Yeah. What's done is done, and you have to try to look forward and take any course corrections that you might need to make. But let's just say, rather than trying to time the market and going off of his feelings and looking at market sentiment and investing money when everything seemed good, what if he had just taken an approach and invested the money when it became available? As he saved it, what if he had just deployed it into the market? We call that dollar cost averaging, where you're putting money in at regular intervals, whether the market's high or whether the market's low, whether the news is good, whether the news is bad. So if he had just done that, his return would have been much better. Instead of accumulating $1.1 million, he would have accumulated $2.3 million. So.
That's great stuff there, Shana. And I feel like it's such a great lesson, not only in market timing, but also in, as you say, time in the market. Being much more important than timing the market is time in the market. So it's really good stuff.
And the good news is that this guy doesn't really exist either, because just like you'll never pick the best time to invest, you'll never be this unlucky either.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's good stuff. Thanks for sharing that all, Shana. Well, Shana, I know we saw a pretty troubling headline just late last week. You want to get to this one? This is a bit of a tough one.
Let's do it.
But so the headline is this: Washington Health Department's Teen Health Club offers access to abortion, child sex change services, all without parental consent. This is really ghastly, Shana. It's Washington State. The Teen Health Club is essentially a kind of brainchild of the state's Department of Health, where teens can learn how to get abortions and sex changes without parents' consent. This is according to the Conservative Ladies of Washington. The hub helps minors seeking these interventions to sign up for Apple Care insurance through Medicaid and then find providers. And the site also offers resources for free transportation to appointments. The hub provides information and resources to teens concerning their physical, sexual, reproductive health, mental and behavioral health, dating, relationships. At least that's what they claim to do. There's nothing healthy about this, obviously, Shana. It also informs adolescents about their health care rights in the state. What do we make of this? This is really ghastly.
Well, what I make of it is I'm glad I don't live in that state.
Yeah.
As a parent, I would be furious to find out that there are organizations out there that would help my child run away from home, disobey his or her parents, and then help them get sex changes or hormones or abortions or, things that just are contrary to the way that I would try to raise my children in the fear and admonition of the Lord. This is just another example of left-wing Democrats trying to find ways to make us pay for the destruction on society. Planned Parenthood, the article mentions, that's one of the organizations that you can get hooked up with if you find yourself needing this kind of assistance as a child. So Planned Parenthood is just despicable, in my opinion. If they can't snuff out a life at the womb by encouraging someone to have an abortion, then they want to make sure that they snuff out life of the next generation by sterilizing the current generation. Planned Parenthood isn't just all about abortions anymore. It's now you can go there to get sex change hormones and things like that. So, what better way to get someone to reject God's way for life, for sexuality, marriage, and procreation than to tell them, you can do whatever you want. You can live however you want. And we'll help you disobey your parents. We'll help you avoid the consequences of going your own way. We'll help you get treatment for the sexually transmitted disease that you got from having sex outside of marriage. Or we'll help you remove that lump of tissue that's growing inside you that will eventually emerge from the womb as a human being if you don't do something to stop it and ruin your life. We'll help you mutilate your body in an effort to make it appear and function in a way that it wasn't designed for, all in the name of love, so that you can love whomever you choose. Love here being not the kind of love that we find in the Bible, but just a cover for being sexually promiscuous with whomever you want. Seth, thank God we have ministries like Preborn,
Amen.
Where kids
Amen.
can hear life-saving truth. And that's why we partner with ministries like Preborn, and we encourage you to fund the light. You want to tell our listeners some more about Preborn?
Absolutely. Yeah, folks, Preborn is one of the largest pro-life organizations in the country. They're fighting back against the darkness of abortion. Every year, Preborn helps save thousands of babies from being murdered in the womb, and they also bring the gospel of Jesus Christ to thousands of mothers and fathers. I think last year, Shana, we saw somewhere around 60,000 babies were saved, and somewhere around 10,000 mothers came to Christ. I mean, it's really remarkable what Preborn does, and they've been standing with us here for many, many years now. It's kind of an interesting partnership, Shana, a financial organization with a pro-life organization, but Preborn they've actually referred to us as the most pro-life radio show out there, and I just appreciate that so much, and we love the work that they're doing. Financialissues.org, and click that Preborn banner, Shana. That's the best way to go if you want to learn more about them and make a donation to the work that they do. It's really, really good.
That's a badge of honor that I like to wear.
Absolutely.
To be the most pro-life radio show out there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Really.
so folks, today we've talked about don't be a market timer, trust the Lord, rely on biblical strategies, defund darkness, have a biblically responsible investment strategy, and fund the light with ministries like Preborn.
Yeah, it's good stuff. I think we've got time to get to a question or two here, Shana, before the end of the segment. Dennis is 55, saying, good morning, Shana. Can you tell me if a 1-month CD pays interest differently than a 6-month CD? I recently purchased 1 month at 5.35%, and although it showed in the estimated income section of the account that I would be paid about $1,200, it only paid out $116. Thank you for your guidance. What do you think, Shana? How can you help Dennis?
I don't have all the relevant information there, but I guess I could speculate on a couple of things. Perhaps the amount of interest was the annualized rate. If you had that one CD for a whole year, maybe that was the amount of interest, and then it paid out a portion of that. I don't know if that math works out right or not. Or maybe Dennis, did you buy it at a discount where you had a return of principal that was kind of like the accumulated interest, and then you got the additional interest. So I'm not sure. There could be a couple of different things, but a 1-month CD, and I don't know which brokerage platform you're on, so I don't know what the output there looks like. So the interest rates are always going to be the annualized rate. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully it was one of those situations. If not, send us a follow-up question.
Definitely. Yeah, do so, Dennis. We got this question in on Friday, Shana, on social media from Michael. He's saying, I have a Fidelity account set up for my grandchildren right now. I've got around 8,000, 70% in ETF 1, say 30% is in ETF 4. Should I add another one of the ETFs, and which one? What do you think?
Yeah, so that's a great start. If you're using only an ETF strategy, one that I would say consider adding in there would be ETF number 3. That's going to give you some international exposure there. I would suggest that you consider following some of the ETF, the full ETF or fund model, and including some of those other things for diversification, because that's you can't really cover all your bases with the ETFs.
Awesome. A quick word of encouragement here, Shana. Eddie said he loved the conference call from last week. One of the best we've done, so keep up the good work. If you haven't listened to the conference call, folks, do it today.
Yep, it's up there on the partner website, financialissues.org. Well, folks, if you listen to the short version of the show, we have to bid you a farewell today, but you can catch the full show and all the past episodes on our phone app, Apple or Android. Just go download the app, and you can also listen on your favorite podcast, Apple or Spotify. For the rest of you, stick with us. We're going to be back with more fun. Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org. That is preborn.org or financialissues.org and click on the Preborn banner.
Every time I turn on the news, I get so frustrated. When I read a news headline, it's obvious they're just trying to manipulate me for clicks and views. I just want to stay informed about what's going on, and I don't want to be told how to think by anyone. I knew I needed to find an alternative, and thankfully I found FISM News. They let the viewer know what's going on, and they don't try to manipulate how they think about it. If you want to check out FISM News, go to fismnews.tv.
Where's Mima? We found out Shepard's diagnosis when I was about 17 weeks pregnant. We learned that he was going to need a series of surgeries after he was born in order to give him what they considered a normal life. And we weren't sure how this worked.
Yeah, very emotional, very, very broken. And as my wife just said, not sure how this worked. And called Samaritan, and they said, you just go have that baby. You leave the rest to us.
And just to hear the confidence on the other end of the phone of, this is not something that you need to be concerned about at all. You focus on the health of your family, the health of your baby, and we will walk with you every step of the way.
I just love the first book of Exodus. The king says, the Jews are too many. Get rid of them. I command you to kill the firstborn. But the midwives to the Hebrews heard the order, and what did they do? They defied it, and God dealt
of G, a Repple, or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us here as we help you wade through all of your financial issues. We've been talking about market timing today, but we've had some questions that have come in more recently about a topic that we talked about last Friday. That was diversification and asset allocation. So this is the part of the show where we really get more into the nitty-gritty of the strategy and how things work, where we really getting around to answering a lot of questions from the listeners and the partners. So I wanted to bring my friend and colleague, Jason MacDowell, back to talk to us about diversification and asset allocation and how we manage these topics, how we integrate these topics really into the individual strategy. So Jason, welcome back. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me again. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we talked about diversification and asset allocation on the show last week, and we've gotten some partner questions that we wanted to try to get some answers to. So before we get to that, though, what input do you have on the topics of diversification and asset allocation?
On those topics, I think I'm going to warn those that are working with other advisors out there. Maybe you just started listening to the program, getting new to the biblically responsible investing. It's the mutual fund models, specifically with diversification. What we want to look out for is duplication. Now, the FISM strategy has sector-based asset allocation models, and with that, they were set up by our late founder, Dan Celia, a specific way so that duplication doesn't happen. With mutual funds, sometimes there's one that's passive where it's not actively managed, and then there's others that are actively managed that are, switching out to meet the objectives of the funds. So with those mutual fund models, sometimes what you'll have is overweighting in sectors, and there's not much you can really do to control that, but that is a problem of duplication. So that's what the mutual fund models area. The other issue is just the non-biblically responsible investing or violation against it with the indexing. There's mutual funds out there that index to the benchmarks like S&P 500, and that's not going to be biblically responsible at all. So that's used very commonly with those advisors that aren't biblically responsible.
Yeah.
The other.
So I think we do a really great job here at the ministry of making things simple. So if you worked with an advisor for a long time, you may not even look at your monthly statements because you see all of these different positions. You don't really know what they are. You've just kind of, trusted the management to somebody else. And so I would just encourage those of you who feel like investing is super complicated to check out our strategy, because we really give you an easy way to do it. And, ignorance is really what breeds fear. And so, when you don't really know what you own, you just see that you own 20 different mutual funds. You don't really know who's managing them. You don't know what's inside them. But whenever you get to a portfolio like the ones that we help you manage, then you can really get into the nitty-gritty. You can see, well, I own company X, Y, and Z. And here's what company X, Y, and Z does. And if their stock price has gone up or gone down, well, I can go look at the financial news, and I can have some understanding about why my investments are moving in the way that they're moving. And, the antidote to fear that is caused by ignorance is understanding. So, now you have understanding, and your fear level decreases, and you really get a good understanding, working knowledge of what you're invested in. And then when you get to the biblically responsible part, once you realize that, a lot of the companies that you own in those indices or in those mutual funds are supporting agendas that you're praying against, man, now you're really motivated to get out of them. Well, let's get to some questions that have come in about the conversations that we were having about diversification and asset allocation. So we got a question from Rod, and he said, recently MA 34 was removed from the buy list and MA 42 was added. Both are in the same sector, so I assume that going forward you feel more positive about the new addition compared to the one that was removed. In situations like these, if we already own a company that was removed, is it best to continue to hold it, or would it make sense to make a sideways move into the new company? Well, Jason, I know that you've been using the financial issue strategy for a long time, and we build a lot of portfolios together. So what do you think the answer is?
So with the FISM strategy, the answer is going to be a hold. So when a company is removed from, say, a buy list, we call that, or I like to call it, the new money window. It's the opportunity to get in until some changes have happened with the ministry, with you and the investment team that way. So once that's decided and it's moved from the buy list, it's always going to be a hold. So we use a long-term strategy, so that hold's going to be there. Buy list is mainly for new money going into those companies. Now, if there's a similar company that's there, well, that's not going to be proper diversification, and that will happen with the buy list. There's going to be multiple companies that come on there during that period of time. You can put new money in, and they're going to be similar. If you take a look, I'm glad Rod has actually looked into these companies and they're similar enough. That's the best part about the ministry, is putting enough information there so that you can read into the companies and learn why you're investing in these companies and then make your decisions from there. But as a general guidance from the diversification within the sector, try to look for a company. If you're going to add to that specific sector, look for another company that's doing something different. Maybe it's a different capitalization, large cap, mid cap, or if you're in the younger age ranges and the small cap, micro caps work for you for those growth acts. But try to look at those other factors too while you're doing your research between the companies. So
that's a good point. That's a really good point. You know, we talk about diversification and diversifying with different asset classes, different sectors, and even diversification within the sector, which is what you're talking about. So if you see that a company was removed, it is a hold. So it doesn't mean that you should sell it unless we tell you that you should. And so if there's another similar company that's on there, maybe look at something different because you want to have diversification within your sector. So great points there as well. Well, we got another question from Sherry, and she's confused about which sectors to use in her account. So she's using the 55 to 65 asset allocation model. She says she has no debt, and she's up 32% in her portfolio. That's great news. She also gives some more information there about some details, some money she has in different types of accounts, and in her 401k that they're adding. But her main question really is, which sectors should I invest in which type of account? So now we're talking about diversification between different types of accounts. What do you think?
That's a great question. We're going to have, hopefully in the future, in the next time we chat, talking about tax planning. So I'll leave that portion there. But with the sectors, there are certain sectors that are good for certain types of accounts. What are those accounts? We talk about qualified accounts. We talk about non-qualified accounts, or that could be also a taxable brokerage account. So for qualified accounts, that just means that the government gives it special rules and special tax treatment. That's going to be your traditional IRAs and then your Roth IRAs. So the Roth IRAs are tax advantageous. So as long as you meet some qualifications, there's going to be the tax-free growth. And then if you're over 59 and a half and you've had it open for 5 years, then you have the ability to take that out tax-free, which is great. So that's going to be good for your tech sector and your healthcare sectors. Those are going to be the two top. Maybe consumer discretionary also would be good in certain business cycles of the market. That's a little bit more complex. We can get into it at a future time. Those are two good sectors there. Non-qualified accounts or the taxable brokerage account. Sometimes you might have a Roth, an IRA, and a taxable brokerage account as part of your portfolio. A good place for the non-qualified accounts is the ETFs. So you can look at those certain ETFs, maybe the small cap or the international fund ones, can go in the Roths as well. So you have a choice there. We'll unpack that more to future conversation, Shana. But I think that's a good start there with those sectors.
Yep, and that tax located strategy really comes out of a belief that we believe taxes are going to be higher in the future than what they are today. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation. We don't have time to get into all of that today, but that's the summary of why we have a tax located strategy, and we encourage diversification amongst the different types of accounts. So, you know, just in looking at some of Sherry's details there, she's got the bulk of her assets, much like most people do, concentrated in the pre-tax IRA account. So with smaller amounts in the individual account and smaller amounts in the Roth account. So the thing that you're going to want to do, you know, is just start with the Roth account. Put your most aggressive investments in that Roth account. You're going to be limited by the dollar amount that you have in there, of course. And then your ETFs primarily in the taxable individual brokerage account. And then just by necessity, the rest of it is probably going to have to be in the traditional IRA account. Hopefully you'll have some opportunity in the future to maybe move those around. Well, Jason, thanks for joining us today. And you brought up something very important, taxes and that tax window. So maybe we can pick up that conversation again next week. So hopefully you can come back and help us talk about that. Well, folks, we're going to take a break here at Financial Issues, but we've got more to come. We hope that you will stick around and learn more about the financial issues that we help you with, putting Christ at the center of your portfolio, defunding darkness with a biblically responsible portfolio strategy. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come back with more financial issues right after this.
I'm John.
I'm Debbie, and we're Samaritan members.
We have 8 children, ages from 30 down to 15, and we have a ministry called Family Man Ministries.
When he left the pastorate to start the ministry, we had no income for about a year potentially, and so we were living on almost nothing. The cost of health care seemed impossible because we had a big family. And so when I started researching ministries, there was no comparison. It was just the best deal. And so a year after we joined, my 10-year-old daughter at the time got pneumonia, and it was scary. Someone sent a card just to Maggie, and it said, not just that we're praying for you, but that God will always take care of you, and here's $5 for you to go out and get ice cream. It was just really special.
To make that connection, that's an amazing thing. I was sold on Samaritan Ministries. I just thought, okay, I'm a part of this.
Samuel Case, news anchor with FISM News, sits down to read real comments from real viewers.
You know, I tend not to read social media comments, so this is kind of a big deal for me. I'm kind of nervous, but we're going to see how it goes. It's not George. Thanks. It's been a while since I've watched real news. I kind of have a suspicion your name actually is George, but, you know, regardless, thanks so much. We really do strive to be as authentic, real, and professional as we possibly can be, so we really do appreciate that you're picking up on that. And this one's from Echo Pixel. Keep spreading truth. Will do, Echo. Love this. It's just the news, no spin. It'd be nice if all the news was this way, honestly. Just all the facts and no biases. Sadly, that's a pipe dream, though. If you don't like what other news outlets are doing and you like what we're doing, you can always follow us on FISMnews.tv. That's our website. You can also follow us on social media and by downloading the FISM app as well.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Hey, folks, I hope you've enjoyed having Jason MacDowell on the program. We're going to try to do that as much as we can. We've been doing it on Mondays, so we're going to try to keep that going as much as we can. We love having Jason on with Shana here. Good to be here with you all today, this Monday. I'm grateful for you. Thanks for joining us. I'll take a look quickly here at what the markets did over the weekend. So on Friday, they were relatively muted. The NVIDIA driven rally kind of stalled a bit, and so by mid-afternoon the benchmark indices were kind of hanging near the flat line, and that's where they finished on the end of the day, the end of the week on Friday. The Dow was the lone winner just above the flat line. The S&P 500 was down about 1/8%. The NASDAQ was down about 1/5 or so. The pre-markets were kind of in the same way, relatively muted this morning, and as the markets opened 15 minutes ago, they currently sit in the same vein, muted. Little change. The Dow is kind of peaking up a little bit now, up 0.3%, but the S&P 500 is right below the flat line, and the NASDAQ is down about 0.2 of a percentage point as we kick off the final week of June here. All right, folks, we got the ag report coming up here. Hey, before I get to the ag, I just want to thank you all so much again for your prayers for Craig Haugaard. Craig had a little bit of a setback over the weekend. He had to go back to the emergency room. It was just a one-day visit. He had to go back and get some things figured out. He was able to get out, and he's back home now. So we do have an ag report from our faithful ag reporter, Craig Haugaard. But keep those prayers coming for Craig as he heals from his recent surgery. Here is today's ag report with Craig Haugaard.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag update for June 24th. Well, the corn market remains driven by the weather. On Friday, the weather models repeated their weather shift in the 11 to 15-day outlook and added further rains in the eastern corn belt and within a 10-day forecast for that belt. As a result, December corn was 3.5 cents lower at $4.53 1/4. Soybeans benefited from slow farmers selling in Argentina, which is leading to disappointing crush numbers coming from that nation. It's causing traders to think that the U.S. will fill the export gap for longer than had been previously projected. That thought, coupled with decent weekly export sales, gave us a higher close on Friday. We had November new crop bean futures 3.25 cents higher at $11.20 per bushel. Wheat saw more speculative selling as Russia's agricultural minister said that the areas impacted by frost were able to be reseeded in time. As a result, Minneapolis September wheat was 8.5 cents lower at $6.17 1/4. Kansas City dropped by 11.25 cents to close at $5.87. And Chicago wheat was 10.25 cents lower at $5.75 3/4. Cotton futures continue to struggle. At the close, new crop December futures were down 41 points as they closed out the session at 72.21. Livestock futures were mixed. We had August live cattle 60 cents higher at $183.15 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle were $1.45 lower at $258.37 per hundred. After the close, we had the June cattle on feed report, which held a bearish surprise. Traders were looking for cattle placed on feed to be 99.4% of last year's numbers, and instead were given a number of 104.3%. And August lean hog futures were 20 cents higher for the session, $89.32 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures had a very quiet session, and the closing bell rang. July futures were down 2 points at $19.75. Well, this has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
Good to see so many of you this morning on the chat. I see Eddie and Robert, UJ, Claude, all the regulars there, but you got to become a regular. Join us over on the chat. It's a lot of fun. James is there this morning. Great to see you guys over on the chat this morning. So with the time we have left here, folks, I'd love to share just a couple headlines with you and maybe get to some questions if we have time, as well as wrapping up Mike and Shana's comments on market timing from earlier in the program. This headline came across my eyes real interesting. Existing home sales edged lower by 0.7% in May. This was from Friday, I believe, as median sales price reached record highs of almost $420,000. Ridiculous prices for homes these days. So existing home sales dropped 0.7%. The median existing home sales price jumped 5.8% from May 2023 to $419,300. That's the highest price ever recorded, the 11th consecutive month of year-over-year price gains. The inventory of unsold existing homes rose 6.7% from the previous month to 1.28 million at the end of May. That's the equivalent of 3.7 months supply at the current monthly sales price. It's getting harder and harder, folks, to find an existing home out there with all the different things happening. Of course, interest rates skyrocketing. So we'll have to see what happens there as that continues on. But this week, we have a couple things to look out for. Speaking of homes, tomorrow we get the S&P Case-Shiller Home Price Index. And then as the show ends, we'll get consumer confidence. Then Wednesday, we get new home sales as well. Thursday, we'll get our normal jobless claims for the week. We also get GDP growth rate. That's the second revision of that number. We'll get durable goods orders. And we also get pending home sales. Then Friday, we get personal income, personal spending. We get core PCE, and we also get consumer sentiment. That's what we're looking at there as we're continuing on here in quarter. What quarter are we in now? I think it's still quarter two, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, quarter two still. We're coming up to the end of quarter two here in calendar year 2024. Hey, just wrapping up market timing here, folks. You know, you have to remember there are no rich market timers on Wall Street. I would encourage you, if you missed the first part of the show, go back and listen to Shana's commentary on market timing. It's really good. our belief is, listen, you're far better off investing your money when you have the money to invest, not worrying so much about the timing of it, about, okay, when's the perfect time to get in so I can make a couple extra dollars. Don't worry about that stuff. Don't concern yourself with that. It's far better to invest when you're ready to, meaning you have the comfort level to be able to invest. You have the money set aside that's not savings, that's not emergency, that you don't live off of. That's money that is set aside for investing, where if you were to lose that money, it wouldn't be detrimental for you. You remember Dan always used to talk about how you don't want to spend the money that you have saved up to invest. The market drops and then your transmission blows and now you're up the creek without a paddle because you don't have the money to pay for something that should have been in savings all along. Once you have that money set aside, get into the market when you feel comfortable with it. And if you're concerned about the risk of equities, maybe equity investing isn't for you. And I say that understanding totally. That means that maybe there are people listening out there who might be partners, but if they think a little more about it, maybe they'll think, you know what, I'm just not ready for the partnership yet. That's fine. That is completely fine. We want you to be able to do this when you are ready. And when you can do it from a heart that is trusting in God, that's confident that He's going to provide, and to be able to follow our strategy and trust that it's going to be long-term, meaning you're going to see ups and downs, and that's okay. That's normal. That's all part of it. So be confident and do what you can comfortably do while ultimately trusting the results to God. So I appreciate having the opportunity to get to talk with Shana about that earlier in the show there, and we'll do some more of that on tomorrow's show for sure. But for right now, let's get to some questions here. We've got one that came in from Claude. Grant, what do we have there from Claude?
Yeah, so this question from Claude has to do with whether the Biden administration will give first-time home buyers money, especially like he specifies $25,000 for first-time home buyers. Is this something the Biden administration is actually planning on?
Claude, that's a really good question. I think this was from a few days ago, but it was from a headline that we read where we talked about how this is possibly a plan of the Biden administration. I think a few things that we can see here. First, we could potentially see a lot of foreclosures and bankruptcies of these homes in the years thereafter. We just talked about the spike in home prices. Many people, probably what would happen here is you see many people who should not purchase a home yet. They're not ready. They don't have the money. They don't have the experience. They don't have the fortitude. They don't have the ability to be able to pay a mortgage down. They should still rent. Many people who would then get this kind of this gift from the government, this hook to get them in, would take on the burden of home ownership only to realize that they aren't actually able to do it, and then we would see some foreclosures. I think that could certainly happen. I think from a bigger picture, though, Claude, what we might also see there, and again, this is all speculation. I don't have a crystal ball or anything, but we could see more government overreach afterwards. Oftentimes what happens, especially financially, is when free people accept handouts from their governing overlords, what tends to happen is they end up being willing to give more and to give more and to give more. And it feels like freedom. It's actually slavery. It really is. And that's strong language there, but it's true. The freedom gets reduced each time we accept help from the ruling government. Ronald Reagan warned about this. He said the scariest words you can hear are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. The benefits, in quotes, the benefits, our radio audience, that's quotations, that always comes with a price. It always comes with a price. And the price here would be twofold. Number one, you're giving up the freedom of from accepting that help, and also the price would then come, the price tag would be a tax burden on the rest of us, because who's footing the bill here for these $25,000 for these first-time home buyers? It's the taxpayers. It's always the taxpayers. So it's a similar thing here, Claude. It reminds me of government housing in some way. This is a similar solution to it. It's not quite the same, but it's a similar thing. It just doesn't work to help people build good habits and work hard and provide for themselves when the government steps in and just hands out stuff based on the taxpayer dollars of its citizens. It never works. And so I think, Claude, this could be just another result of this. Perhaps the last result would just be higher taxes. You know, if we see this happening, if this does come through, the more government spends, the more it needs to create revenue. And the only way that government creates revenue is through taxes. So it's a good question, brother. Again, you know, I certainly hope and pray that this wouldn't happen. I don't think this is a good thing, not just for the economy, but also for the individuals. You know, for people who have the opportunity to be able to buy a home, or for the people who don't have the opportunity, for them to be able to learn some patience and to understand that benefits like this, they take work, and it's far better to earn that through hard work than to be given it by a government that thinks it's there to help. It's a good question, Claude. I appreciate it so much. And I appreciate you all joining us for the show today. As always, make sure to check out our conference call from last week. It is posted on the website. And join us tomorrow again. We'll talk about the same stuff. We'll answer your partner questions. Shana's going to be on. It's going to be a good time. Until then, remember, it's all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with the money that God has given to us. God bless you all. I'm Seth Udinsky, and I'll see you tomorrow for more financial issues.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has